Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called How Empaths Alchemize Grief. Discover a gentle somatic path to soften loss and emerge lighter, more open, and alive. My name is Stephen Dyden. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network. And over the years, I think we've attracted an enormous number of empaths, partially because I see empaths as part of the evolutionary avant-garde of humanity. People who are really sensitized and concerned and wanting to help humanity evolve to the next level. But one of the challenges is taking in a lot from the world that can be really difficult to process. So we're going to get to explore how to do that in a more sophisticated way that leaves you lighter with a really wonderful teacher in this arena. Her name is Heidi Dellaire. She's an emotional health coach, body worker, and Ayurvedic practitioner. And we're going to have this time with Heidi. And if you want to go further, we're going to have a brand new course with her. It's called The Alchemy of Grief for Empaths that we'll share more about towards the end of the hour. So very exciting work to come. So Heidi, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh, so nice to be here, Stephen. Thank you so much. I'm very excited.
Great. Well, let's dive in. And I always like to get a little bit of the personal backstory of what led to the teachings that we're going to be exploring today. And so share a little bit about your journey around alchemizing your own grief.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think really it started at a very young age, as a sensitive and empath myself. I was always the observer, the quick to help someone or help an animal, and really kind of that outpouring of like love and wanting to help. And then as life moved on, I started to study biology and medical physiology in college and post-grad. Always had a fascination with the body, but yet hadn't started to work in that field. And then I changed careers at age 40 and started my healing arts journey, as I call it, after kind of losing sight of who I was in a really kind of toxic relationship and a job that no longer served me. So this led me down the path of massage, shiatsu, Reiki, Ayurvedic health, consciousness-based healing techniques, mindfulness, meditation, somatics, and ultimately now nervous system regulation. So in my office here, I really started to put it all together of how the body holds on to things that it cannot digest, whether that be physically in taking food or emotions. And then when we can't digest them, it starts to cause disease or dis-ease, right? So I started to develop my own method of healing, and I've called it now the Heal Your Story method. And it focuses on the major emotions that keep us stuck, like grief, loss, anger, self-worth, lack of joy, etc. And what I have found is that grief is that stickiest emotion. It's the emotion that sits either right above or right below the surface of all kinds of other emotions that tend to knock our nervous system out of alignment and dysregulated. And for an empath, that's a lot of buzzing.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. So I think digestion seems to be kind of a deeper theme here. So what is it about the grief in particular here that makes it very difficult for us to digest and process?
Yeah, well, grief is scary, right? It's that we've lost something, and it can really be anything. And people are afraid to feel it because the world tells us we need to get through it quickly. When we do that, you know, as things come up, we tend to push them away or not want to feel them. And that's when it gets stuck and undigested. Instead of just allowing the process of grief to evolve, right? Like have it be soft instead of hard.
Hmm. And how is this even more exaggerated with empaths?
So with empaths, we tend to take on so much, right? We have the ability to, if we don't know our boundaries, grief can, I think, make us feel really small, even smaller than we are, because it's it's a lot of pressure. And as I said, grief is like the toughest emotion because it's a loss of either a person, the loss of identity, the loss of a job, the loss of health, the loss of wealth, the loss of a close relationship, the loss of, your children who don't want to talk to you anymore, or vice versa with a parent. So grief takes on this really big umbrella for us.
Yeah. And I imagine when you have kind of, more permeable boundaries, it's grief becomes like literally losing a part of yourself.
Absolutely. 100. And, especially with the loss of, let's say, a person, because we put so much of ourselves into a person. If an empath doesn't have like that clear definition of who they actually are, the loss of someone else can be devastating because you no longer know who you are. Literally, anytime you have a loss, the next step is you've lost a part of who you once were. Everything else will be different from here on out.
Mm-hmm. So part of the grieving process is also a little bit of reestablishing like boundary between self and other, it sounds like, particularly with empaths.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can be a hard road sometimes if you don't know where to start, right? Because we get so caught up in our emotions that it's like, well, where's the first step? Because all of this emotional stuff is heavy, or how do I wade through it to get to the right place to just even start?
Hmm. And let's bring in the somatic element, since a lot of you are coming this from the body work and kind of somatic approaches angle. So what is it that we often neglect to understand about the way grief works in our body or lodges in our body?
Yeah. So, most of us live from like here up. And we forget because we get in our thinking mind that we even have a body. We become a little bit even disassociated from our body. So when we can come back in this heart-centered approach to any emotion, not just grief, we're able to connect to those emotions, connect to that part of ourselves that, again, we've sort of shut off. And when we can connect to that inside the body, there's this chemical reaction that starts to happen, like cellular, very cellular level and cellular memory, that we start to move these stuck emotions.
And so how do you work to kind of address these cellular memories versus just what we might realize more kind of like consciously?
Yeah, so like in a lot of these somatic practices, we start with connecting to the body, like literally by actually even touching ourselves, right? Like when was the last time you just like put your hand on your chest or your heart and actually felt yourself breathe, or felt your heartbeat, instead of it just being this automatic process that happens? So when we can dive in, right, and this is what massage and all of the other work that I've done before, you actually like feel your tissues, you feel your body, and you can begin to pinpoint exactly where you might be holding grief. So for example, okay, I'll just use a client example. I have a client who lost their husband just a few years ago, and her grief is held right here, right here in this shoulder. And when she can breathe into that space, it softens and allows the emotion to not be so heavy, or the pain to be so heavy.
Hmm. It's fascinating. Do you find that there's like particular patterns of where grief tends to constellate for people, or is it really very individual and variable?
It is very individual and variable. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
like
so,
some people it can be in their throat, some people it can be in their chest, some it's in their jaw, right? That they can just feel like all that tension is coming in and
mm,
they're clenching, or they feel it in their hands. Yeah.
And so when you start to kind of notice so it's like the tip of the iceberg, the symptom, that sort of tension patterns or something closed, like how do you kind of work into the deeper layers of it in your methodology?
Yep. So I separate that from any body work that I do, and we do this practice of, again, like getting quiet. It's almost like going into meditation, but I guide you into the space so it's not so scary. And we move through what I will call like almost through the layers of your body to get into this heart space, the energetic heart space. And from there, when we can concentrate there, we are able to open ourselves to a little bit more love for ourselves and to find these spaces to soften.
Hmm. Beautiful. How does this differ from how you work with other emotions like anxiety or that the grief sort of has different qualities to it, or?
They're very similar. We take the same approach, but grief tends to be a little deeper. And so it needs a little, I would say, softer touch almost. Um, and that we give it the space that it needs. We don't push. A lot of times I can move faster with someone who, let's say, has panic attacks, and we work on their anxiety and they figure out, wow, it's not even like my anxiety, it's an emotion that I'm feeling. And we can work on that emotion to quickly stop like a panic attack from ever happening again. But with grief, what people need to remember is it's not about forgetting, it's about sitting with it, right? Like someone who has died, you're never going to forget the day that it happened or the events that led up to it. But if we can soften sitting with it, it becomes easier.
Hmm. Beautiful. Well, let's circle back with some of the clarification of boundaries work, and how do you sort of work with that with empaths so that there's kind of reestablishment of clearer boundaries, and on the other side of kind of doing some of the deeper somatic release work.
Yeah, and we start real simple with boundaries of understanding like where we have lost ourselves, and being gentle with understanding I didn't set up a boundary, or someone crossed my boundaries, right? And being gentle with both of those to find out where that middle ground is to keep yourself safe, right? Like empaths, I find, tend not to put themselves in safe positions often. When I say safe, meaning emotionally safe, that we get caught in the space of, I don't want to upset someone else by setting a boundary. When in actuality, setting that boundary keeps ourselves safe and sets a clear line for someone else. And it can be done in a very soft way. Like they don't have to be very hard boundaries, right? And as an empath myself, I had very soft boundaries until I realized I really, really needed them. And once I learned them and like doing all of this own work myself, realized like how strong it made me feel, how confident it made me feel, how much my self-worth mattered more. So boundaries for empaths is extremely important.
Hmm. I want to ask about also whether some of the grief work is connected in with things beyond just our personal story. So I know with the more permeable boundaries as an empath, we sort of will often kind of like plug into larger fields of energy, emotion, inherited
Mhm.
patterns. So I'd love for you to share a
Yeah.
little bit about what you've seen in terms of how to start to also tease those things apart and work with them in a way that helps them release.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have this ability as empaths, and I learned this through body work too, that like just even putting your hand on someone, you can absorb. And learning how to be able to do that and not absorb is important. Same with your outside world. There's a lot going on in the world these days, and it's hard to not take it all in. And what the work does is allows you to be who you are, be loving, care about the world, but not take it on as your own, that it's not yours personally to hold. And we can also have inherited grief, like passed through cells. So think about that, because we share the cells of our parents and their parents and their parents. And in cells, there's cellular memory. So memories can be held. And so generational grief can be passed on to us. Right? You know, you've probably heard like the mother wound or the father wound, like those are real things. And to be able to, again, differentiate what is yours and what's not yours becomes very important.
Makes a lot of sense. I want to ask also about, I know breath is very essential to your work as well. So the connection with breath and grief and healing thereof.
Yes. I have found myself and others who are sensitives that we often forget to breathe or short breathe. That breathing in and of itself is where a lot of emotions get stuck, and how hard it can be to open the breath in everyday life, that we get caught in just this short breathing. And when we do that, we disconnect ourselves from, to me, the most important organ of our body, our lungs. Because if our lungs don't work, we don't work. Essentially, we die without them. And so learning to work with the breath innately connects us to our nervous system and our vagus nerve and everything inside the body that knows innately how to heal itself. So when we can use the breath to go in, we're starting a healing process every day.
Beautiful. And one other area that I think you have some really interesting innovations around is around integration and how to sort of pace and work with the healing process. And maybe share a little bit about your philosophy there and what you recommend in terms of designing an arc for healing something, healing grief in a more somatic way.
Yeah, I think I did mention a couple of times that grief again needs to be held like an egg, almost, that it needs cushioning and safe place to then turn into something else, right? Or you can think of it as a bulb of a flower, right? Like it needs a container and it needs nutrients to unfold and become something else. So when we can take grief and add things to it that allow, I will call it the grief bubble, you can call it any emotional bubble, to start to open, it allows what needs to get out, and what needs to come in.
Nice. I like that image of the grief bubble, that it's sort of, there's like a membrane there that needs to be softened and opened so you can have an exchange. That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Do you want to just give a few examples of how like a grief practice might have unfolded working in this more holistic, integrative way that you're talking about?
Yeah, so like a whole path for grief is, again, allowing your body and your being to be soft around whatever you have lost is the first part. And then there becomes like an awareness of either I'm pushing away or I'm afraid to feel the grief. and then an acknowledgement of that, and allowing, okay, if that's happening, then let's take on this practice of breathing, moving into the heart space, being quiet, listening, doing the somatic work, and then releasing the practice of the day, because better out than in. And then I do I would suggest people do like an embodied writing. I do a lot of this with the work, and I'm doing so in this course, that after each module, like there's a embodied writing piece that then takes that even further. And that's where like the big integration really happens.
Fascinating. Well, let's go ahead, Heidi, and dive into a bit of an experience of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe we could each focus on something that we're, perhaps haven't released, and that there's some grief that's in the system, so we can get a little taste.
Yeah, absolutely. So for you and for anyone watching, I'd like you to start with just, either gently closing your eyes or just softening your gaze in a seated position with both feet on the floor firmly is best, if you can. Take a little breath in and out, and drop your shoulders. Take a deep breath in, and even deeper breath out. Drop your shoulders again. Bring softly into your mind's eye a most recent loss or a grief. It doesn't have to be large. It can be a small loss or grief. You can bring that into your mind's eye. And if you're someone who can't visualize, sense the loss or grief, or feel into it. I'm going to have you take another deep breath in and out. Place a hand over your heart. Feel the contact of your hand to your chest. Feel your heartbeat. Feel your lungs moving gently. Where you have your hand, I want you to invite that grief in to that heart space under your hand. Just gently notice what it feels like or what it looks like. Is it heavy? Is it sticky? Or something else? Maybe it's black. Maybe it's red. Or maybe something else. Just let it sit there gently. I want you to take your hand and press just a little bit harder. And take a very deep breath in. And a deep breath out. Get curious about this feeling inside. Does it have something to tell you? Just keep breathing. Keep feeling. I want you to feel your feet now, keeping your hand on your chest. Push down onto the floor just a little bit so you can feel your feet. We're grounding. And we're looking. Just let the energy flow between your feet and your hand. Whatever it feels like or looks like for you. And as it's moving back and forth, just gently notice if there's a place in your body where that grief is lighting up a little bit. Maybe in your hip, maybe in your throat, maybe in your knees, maybe right there in your heart. Another deep breath in and out. You can gently open your eyes. I want you to take both hands like this. Place them up against the side of your ear. Slowly just come down your throat. Feel right back into this space. And if there's a sound that this grief has, let it move through your throat. Let it out. Feel your shoulders getting lighter. It's easier to breathe. And it's time to just sit beside that. Sit beside that event or the thing with love for yourself and for what you have lost. Repeat after me on the inhale. I give love to myself around this loss. Say it again. I give love to myself around this loss. And then I can breathe easier now. Just take a few more soft, gentle breaths in and out. And when you are ready, slowly open your eyes and come back to the room. And now that you're back, give your hands a shake. Move your feet around a little bit too. Feel yourself come back to all experiences.
Well, thank you. That brought up some real tenderness for me. Do you want to share a little bit more about the why behind each stage there, so we can kind of really ink that practice in?
Yeah, it's allowing yourself to go deeper and deeper in, and you're kind of following the breath in. You're allowing the space inside your body and the heart space for that grief to be able to come forward and be recognized. And then when we do a little grounding with the feet, we're keeping our body connected. We're not allowing ourselves to go up into our heads, really grounding ourselves. And then allowing that energy between the ground and our heart space to just move. And then gently seeking. For some, it's going to be very easy to find. And others, you might have to get a little more investigative, like do it again, to be able to know where it sits. And for some, it might not sit in a recognizable spot. And that's why we also use, okay, if it's sitting in the breath, see if this is where I get a little choked up, or the throat, to verbally allow it to move out of the body.
What about the naming of it too, and sort of just that sort of verbalization? That sounds like it seems like an important part as well.
Anytime we can name something, I think it adds a little bit more recognition to it, right? We can say grief, but if you can actually like name the grief or name where it is or name the feeling, it gives it more contextualization to be able to, what do I even want to say? It's like, it's almost like making it real. Like you're giving it this thing that you can visualize or feel or sense that then can soften. It goes back to the grief bubble, right? But it might not be a bubble for somebody. Maybe it's like a hard, bowling ball, or for someone else, it's, a prickly bush, or it's a steel plate that they can't get through. And so when they can name it and put feeling behind it, it allows us to then be able to, and I'll use the word alchemy, alchemize it to turn it into something else. If it's metal, we can melt it. If it's hard rock, we can break it apart to see more of what's inside.
I'd for you to share a little bit more about the alchemy and what do you perceive all the different modalities? How is that the alchemy actually working energetically?
Yeah, so, you know, our body is so amazing and intelligent. We can't even scratch the surface, I think, of what we could do with our bodies. And when we can, like, I'm going to use this from one of my practitioners, when we can, you know, think with the body, wow, we're really able to move things immensely in our lives. That when we can, we'll just use grief because that's what we're working on here. When we can start to alchemize grief, it into something else, into something more beautiful, right? Like let's just use joy and grief, and they're backed up to a fence, right? They're backed up back to back on a fence. There's very little in between them that's different. And so when we can just understand that space in between, we can flip everything on its head. And it allows us to be able to move through life lighter and see the specks of joy that we may have missed when the grief is in its, I'll call it its heart form.
Mm, beautiful. Well, I've been asking a lot of questions and
Yeah.
getting a lot of good clarifications. Yeah, let's just open some time for anything you want to share about your process that we haven't gotten to share yet, and then afterwards we can bridge into talking about how next steps for people.
Yeah. Well, you know, what I want folks to understand is that even though like this course is focused on grief, it, you know, it's parallel to all of the other like tough emotions of anger, self-worth, joy or lack of joy, any of these emotions, right? Shame, that they move in and out of importance, I'll say. Well, not importance, but they slide over each other, right? Like we can understand like grief is there, but what else is there with the grief? There can be a lot of shame because I never said that thing. We'll use death here. There's, I never got to say that thing to that person, and now I feel shame around it. So with these other emotions, um, even if you don't think that there's grief in your body, it may be showing up as something else. And that by doing this practice and this process, um, you can actually help heal that other emotion.
Mm, beautiful. Well, it's clear that how much experience you have and how much you're integrating and how you go about this. So let's talk about your upcoming course in more
Yeah,
detail, since it's a great opportunity for people to really do some serious releasing of grief and transmuting it into something that really serves our journey in a deeper way. So
sure.
Heidi's new course is called, again, The Alchemy of Grief for Empaths, a somatic journey to soften loss and emerge more grounded, open, and alive. You can find it at the URL alchemyofgriefcourse.com, alchemyofgriefcourse.com. It's a 7-week journey. There are no prerequisites for this. It's just if you recognize that you have some grief that hasn't moved, that you need to move through, and that you want to have some tools how to better do that. So, Heidi, I'd love for you to share some of what your intentions are that people will come away with and how that can benefit their lives. And then let's go through the modules and give a tour of what you'll be leading.
Yeah, absolutely. So my intention for this is at the end of 7 weeks with me that you've been able to recognize your grief, um, understand tools and we'll call them tricks too, to be able to get into the body and regulate the emotion. I call it emotional regulation and nervous system regulation at the same time, so that any anxiety that may come about with this grief gets softened as well as you're alchemizing the grief. right? And that you understand what kinds of grief there are. There's your personal grief, there's collective grief, there's generational grief. What is it that you're holding? And it could be twofold. There could be more than one thing going on with you. And as we move through the course, that it's important to take the process of grief through almost a ritual process, and not getting stuck on my life before, my life after. It's honoring both places. Okay. And by the end, you've really, again, softened the grief bubble. I'll just keep coming back to it. I think I'm going to use that from now on, Stephen, the grief bubble. That whenever you have another loss that comes up, you have the tools to be able to soften that bubble.
Beautiful. Well, let's go through the modules and give a little more detail on what you're going to be teaching and leading people through. So module 1 is called Recognize the Many Faces of Grief to Take the First Step Towards Healing.
Yes. So in that module, this is where we're really going to look at, that grief isn't just about the death of someone, that all kinds of things can be woven in, and it can be divorce, it can be a broken relationship, it can be the loss of a loved one. And as you'll learn how that where grief lives in the body and why identifying it is the first step towards healing, right? We just sort of did a little bit of that and talked about that.
Module 2, Unearth and Process Your Disenfranchised Grief to Transform Empathic Overwhelm.
Yeah, this one really sort of gets into, I think, a little bit more of your inner child, and where we have been told that to just move through our grief, or that we haven't been able to express our grief in the way we want to or need to.
Module 3, recognize how your grief lives in your body so you can release tension through safe restorative practices.
So grief can show up in ways of fatigue, like we just worked through holding the breath, tightness somewhere in the body, emotional overwhelm. So we're going to learn where it's living and what it feels like in everyday life, and how to then move it out.
Module 4, rituals to honor what was and create sacred closure from a distance.
We didn't talk about this, but I'm also an end-of-life doula. And so I have a lot of firsthand knowledge in grief, grief of families and individuals as they're moving through. And what I have found super important is that there needs to be some sort of ritual. And in this one, we're doing a personal ritual of, understanding like the grief of ourselves moving through our lives and creating some ritual around that.
Module 5, transform collective loss and empath fatigue to stop absorbing the difficult emotions of others.
Yeah, here we are. We're in a very chaotic world, and things are coming at us at the speed of light. And that can be very difficult for empaths because we can feel like we are just bombarded. So this is where we're going to work on like some boundaries around like the collective grief that's happening in the world, and really be able to feel less fatigue when we turn on the news, or if we don't.
Module 6, turn pain into meaning with the alchemy of grief.
Now, I touched on this before, right after we did the breath work, that in this module, this is where we're really going to look at the other side of grief, where we can take what grief has shown us and turn it into something much more beautiful. Maybe it's a new purpose in life. Maybe it's just seeing some tender joy in places we've never seen it before, but really just taking it and turning it again on its head into something more beautiful.
And finally, live lightly with module 7, live lightly with grief when you cultivate a new relationship to your life.
So we'll build on module 6 to then not feel so heavy, right? Grief is very heavy. It carries a lot of weight. And when we lift that off, we're able to we're free. We are freer. And it's, again, we're not pushing it away. We're just recognizing it and not taking it on so much as a burden.
Beautiful. Well, what a beautiful program. And it's really very timely because there is so much to grieve in the collective right now. And I know a lot of people have gotten paralyzed by that. So this is really a great offering because collective trauma can trigger our own trauma and then all the unresolved stuff that really needs to be metabolized so that we can really shine a bright light and still be helping move the world forward in a good way right now, both individually and collectively. So a little bit more about this program. Again, there's more detail at alchemyofgriefcourse.com. So you've heard about the 7 90-minute modules, each of which you'll have time to ask your questions live of Heidi and engage practices live. And you'll also get recordings of every session, both video and audio, as well as word-for-word transcripts. There'll be weekly exercises and practices. There's a community group to support you and deepen your experience, as well as small group time to connect with other participants. And on the page, you'll also see Heidi's been generous with a number of extra bonuses to enhance your journey. There's a digital journal called the Gentle Grief Journal. Heidi, you want to share about that bonus?
Yes. So, throughout this course, we're going to be doing a lot of embodied writing. So I wanted to give everyone something extra to be able to take, and you can use this again and again and again and again. Is the beauty of it, is that it can be recycled. It's not a one and done thing. And journaling to me is that, again, extra piece of alchemizing anything.
Great. And then there's a second bonus. It's called a Pocket Guide to Grief in the Body. This is a full digital guide from Heidi. You want to share more about that bonus as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We discussed during right after the breathwork exercise that grief can often live somewhere in the body. And the pocket guide is, if you're feeling pain somewhere, what that pain potentially might emotionally mean. And so therefore it allows you to get a little more curious and dig in a little bit more of like, oh, maybe this just isn't physical pain. Again, yes, we all have physical pain from things we do, like car accidents, or, I fell down taking the dog out. But if there's something like that, it just shows up weirdly, maybe it means something emotional. So there's just a tie-in to different parts of the body with what it could potentially emotionally mean.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful extra bonus. And then there's one third bonus that I want to draw attention to, which is your extra little incentive to sign up right away. This is a video workshop with Heidi called Managing Grief and Loss Through the Holidays in Everyday Life. And you get it free when you sign up by midnight tonight. So Heidi, you want to share a little bit more about that special bonus?
Yes, I just did this workshop this past holiday. The holidays can be very, very tender when around any type of loss, right? Especially grieving a loved one, and it's really kind of an emotional. I'll get a little teared up by it potentially. There's my empath. That it allows people to tackle the holidays or manage the holidays in a way that doesn't feel so painful and alone. And that grief can be, again, alchemized even just by watching a video of me and some other participants working through these situations. There's a participant I'll share on there that is going through their partner Alzheimer's, right? And so that person is lost to them, even though they're still caregiving. It's very, very heartwarming to be able to share these experiences.
Beautiful. Well, that's a beautiful extra reason to sign up right away. The Managing Grief and Loss Through the Holidays and Everyday Life video workshop. So again, there's more detail on all of these things at alchemyofgriefcourse.com. I always recommend people really read through a full intro page so that you just know in your body that this is right next step. And then we can assure you that you're in good hands, that you'll be well supported, and that you'll make some real progress with this integrative framework for working through your grief in a somatic way that really integrates all parts of yourself. So again, alchemyofgriefcourse.com is the URL. So we've kept the investment very reasonable considering all the value here. It's either 3 payments of 128, or you can save 10% when you pay in full of 349. The course is going to start Wednesdays, April 1st and run at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. There's also some beautiful testimonials on the page from people who have worked with Heidi. I've been working with Heidi for over 5 years. She never fails to help me reduce stress and rebalance. Heidi's guidance, I went from chaos to calm and confident and patient in just 8 weeks. So you're in really good hands, and you're working with a proven system that really creates results in terms of alchemizing your grief. So again, it's all at alchemyofgriefcourse.com, and you'll get that special workshop bonus when you sign up by midnight of Managing Grief and Loss Through the Holidays and Everyday Life. So Heidi, we're nearing the end of our time. Anything that's still on your heart you want to share with folks who are considering doing the course with you?
Honestly, I think everybody should take this course, but that's just me. Grief is all around us right now. And I think anybody who takes this course will be able to add more light and brightness back out into the world. And what isn't wonderful about that?
Beautiful. Well, thank you for your wisdom and your heartfelt presence and your generosity of spirit, Heidi. And thank you all for joining. And if you'd like to go further into alchemizing your grief, it's all at alchemyofgriefcourse.com, and you'll get that special bonus if you sign up by midnight tonight, which is the Managing Grief and Loss Through the Holidays and Everyday Life. So thank you so much. Any questions?
Thank you, Stephen.